Awesome. Well, it's always good just to check in, see where everyone's minds are at, and we're going to sit for about 15 minutes. And the encouragement is going to be to kind of, be curious about what's coming up in the mind. Not trying to create hindrances, but rather than just focusing on the breath, which can be really helpful, we will be returning to the breath, but also just really knowing that quality of mind that's arising, rather than the content, noticing that more broad category of if it's craving or aversion or restlessness, just kind of noticing general tendency, I guess. And then knowledge is power, and that knowing the mind can start to release a little bit on its own. So finding a way to sit that feels comfortable, upright if that's possible for you, also relaxed, important. Closing the eyes if that feels good, or just resting your gaze at the floor in front of you. We'll begin and end with the sound of the bell. So to begin, taking a few longer, slower, deeper breaths, if that feels supportive for your nervous system. And then as you feel ready, letting go of any control over the breath. And just allowing the body to breathe however it needs to breathe in this moment. And setting intention. And maybe part of that intention being to set down any pressure or performance. And allowing the mind just to rest in this quality of open, present moment awareness. So just allowing the thinking mind and sounds to fall to the background and really tuning into the rhythm of breath in the body. Noticing the way the body can do this all on its own. And the same way that awareness is happening all on its own. Don't have to manufacture or fabricate it. So we're just letting these two things rest upon each other, the breath and awareness. And to support this process, we'll move through the body, starting at the top of the head, the forehead, just noticing if there's any tension from the day in the temple or the eyes, and relaxing. Similarly with the muscles of the brain and the face, the mouth, the jaw. Noticing how it feels to not have to present any particular way to anyone. And similarly with the shoulders and the shoulder blades, just a gentle relaxation, feeling the weight of the arms, the hands. Just noticing that sensation wherever the hands are resting of that point of contact. Can be a really grounding practice. And as the body kind of softens around this upright spine, relaxing the muscles of the chest, the stomach, all the way down through the lower belly, so that the emotional body can be open. to the best of your ability, relaxing those protective muscles, especially in the abdomen or the lower belly. You can allow the body to breathe a little bit deeper and more relaxed, which starts sending a signal to the brain that it's in a state of rest. And scanning down, feeling the contact, the sit bones on the chair, the cushion, and the weight of the legs, softening through the thighs, the knees, the lower legs all the way through the feet. And just spending a minute here, really contacting the ground, the cushion. And with each out breath, just visualizing that any remaining stress or tension is being carried down through the legs, through the feet, into the earth. And bringing the awareness to the whole body, so top of the head to the bottom of the feet, having a global awareness. Really allowing the mind to settle on the rhythm of the breath. And starting to be curious about state of the mind. Again, not really concerned in the content of thoughts, but the overall tone. How does the mind feel? Is there pushing or pulling? Is there that restless quality or lethargic quality to it? Is there any doubt? And again, this is not for the sake of judgment, but for the sake of insight. We can't know or understand the mind if we're not aware of what's happening. So really bringing an attitude of curiosity to moment experience. Staying with the breath. If you begin to notice a particular pattern or hindrance, you can gently just name it and return. There's no judgment, no need to change anything at all. What's happening in the mind right now? And also, how is that mind state felt in the body? Noticing this correlation of mind and body. And staying with that sensation rather than the story of the mind. Mindfulness is generally a way of simplifying experience. So if it's restless or if there's aversion, what is the felt sense of that mind state? Opening to it. And then also noticing the impermanent, ever-changing quality of the mind. There's this awareness, which is always reliable, open. And then through that awareness can be this changing feed of mind states. So noticing how they arise, how it feels in the body. And also noticing when it passes. Or even if it doesn't pass, does it shift or change? Ultimately, this is meant to be an empowering practice. So in noticing the impermanence of these mind states, it's not me, it's not mine, it's not what I am. It's just restlessness, it's just craving. It's what this mind does. And mindfulness supports untangling from the attachment or the identification with that mind state. For this last minute or so, really letting everything go and coming back to the heart. And allowing yourself to take in some appreciation or gratitude. Breathing through the heart to the center of the chest. And allowing yourself to appreciate anything that is good in this moment. And perhaps to wish that it be shared. May this be of some benefit to others. In some small ways, may the ripple effect of this practice be for the benefit and the welfare of all living beings. May all beings be free. So thank you for your practice. Yeah, just giving yourself a minute to get comfy, move your feet or your ankles if they fall asleep like mine do. And just noticing the kind of quality of your mind and any shifts that may have happened through the meditation, and bringing that forward as we go into some talking and some discussion. I'll share some thoughts. So this week we're going to be continuing our exploration of mindfulness, this book by Joseph Goldstein. And really this is based on the Satipatthana Sutta, early Buddhist teachings, where the Buddha taught different applications of mindfulness. So applying mindfulness to the body, to feeling tone, to the mind, and now we're on the fourth foundation, mind states or dhammas, these various phenomena that arise in the mind. And tonight we're going to be focusing on what are called the Five Hindrances. And I kind of said this last week, but this is one that's very close to my heart because it's so relatable. You know, I find it really helpful when spiritual practices and teachings hit something that feels so human. And it's kind of where mindfulness meets just the everyday, gritty, everyday life. And one thing I love about Buddhism and Buddhist teachings is that it said that these hindrances are actually fuel for liberation, for awakening. You may have heard this phrase, no mud, no lotus. There would be no liberation if there was no hindrances or nothing to be worked with. So the sense-craving, the aversion, the restlessness, lethargy, and doubt are seen as opportunities to practice. And I've always found this kind of both annoying and beautiful at the same time, this encouragement. It's an opportunity to practice with your mind. And there's some kind of radical accountability in that as well. Yeah, so that's what I want to talk about today. I'm just going to kind of go through each of the hindrances and also just talk about how they connect to insight, how each of these hindrances provide kind of a unique opportunity to see something clearly about the mind. And as we're getting to the end of Black History, African American History Month, I'm going to be pulling in a quote from one of Olivia and my favorite teachers, Tuere Sala. She says, "We're not trying to stand in the middle of something and know that the situation will pass. We're trying to stand in the middle of it and know that our overwhelm will pass." And so I want to kind of use this as a thread to weave through all these hindrances that we explore today. It highlights the value of examining the mind and how these mind states kind of color experience, and also their kind of impermanent, not self nature. Okay, so starting with sense desire, craving pleasant stuff or pleasant experiences. I think this is a pretty relatable one, I'm sure. And there's a metaphor that the Buddha used for each one of these with water. And so he said, sense desire is like water mixed with dye. And I was just thinking about how this shows up in my life. And if you're a meditation practitioner, you may get wellness advertising on some of your social media or internet activities. So there seems to be an endless stream of gut health, skincare, running shoes, all these things that are going to make me healthier and an ultra version of myself. And it can feel good. Get a new pair of running shoes feels good to put on. But it can also create this endless cycle of craving, following it, wanting more, right? This kind of dopamine hit we've talked about a lot in this group. And I think the same thing can happen with experiences. Been on meditation retreats, and I'm sitting there 8 days in and thinking about the next meditation retreat and how it's going to be so much better or awesome, or how many experiences am I at where I'm thinking about something else or someone else, right? It's kind of craving always something more or better or different. And there's nothing wrong with pleasant things, but the Buddha taught that this craving can kind of consume the mind and block this quality of clarity in the mind and this kind of joy of having the mind be free in a simple way. And so the insight here is simple. It's just that these aren't wrong or bad, but there's a limited kind of satisfaction from pleasant things. And so always a good question to ask is, how is my presence and how I show up for those that I love impacted by my mind craving or seeking something else? So the second hindrance is aversion. And now sometimes this is translated as like anger, but I think there's anywhere on the spectrum of pushing away experience, not wanting, unpleasant, discomfort, irritation, judgment, you name it. And the metaphor used for this one is water heated until it's boiling, so like boiling water. And the idea being that unpleasant experiences will be there for the rest of life. It's the bad news. But the aversion is the optional part. And the aversion is temporary, like all of these mind states are. And it's important because when I'm in depressive states, my mind tells me, you're miserable, you're hopeless, this is pointless, just stop trying. And it has this kind of timeless truth to it. It's like, you are worthless, right? This is not a temporary feeling in my mind. It's a trying to make a permanent attribution to experience. And there's a lot of aversion in depression for me. I don't know if that's true for everyone, but yeah, aversion to doing things, aversion to getting up, aversion to other people, right? The depressive state for me is very much wanting to push things away, isolate. And I've always had this experience that it's almost like there's a veil over my mind and everything I'm experiencing in the world, even things that do bring me joy. In the moment when that aversive, depressive state is there, it's hard to access any joy. Even seeing people happy, I'm like, just shut up. But then the aversion passes or it lessens. And so it's like the circumstances of my life haven't changed that much, but as the aversion lifts, completely changes how I'm experiencing things. That to me is always such a moment for insight. It's like, oh, I was really just tripping. So often that mind putting that veil of aversion, and then it lifts and it passes, and I can see the delusion of it, the distortion that the mind creates through that quality of aversion. So the insight being that when this boiling water settles, things can appear very different and clear again. Again, going back to the Tuere quote, we're trying to stand in the middle of it and know how our overwhelm will pass. So it's again turning towards noticing how these hindrances cloud the mind and release. And there can be so many forms of aversion. I won't get into all of them. Aversion to change, negative feedback, difficult conversations. And it can turn into a form of repetitive mental patterns that we call rumination. Ruminating negatively on the same thing over and over again. No end in sight. And so this is where mindfulness, I think, is really impactful. Allows the mind to return, investigate what's happening, starts breaking that pattern a little bit. And another form rumination can take is restlessness, which is the next hindrance. I know this one is often referred to as monkey mind. You may have heard that. No disrespect to the monkeys. I hope they're not taking that personally. But how much of life is there restlessness? I think it has to be one of the most common things in the modern world. The mind jumping from an idea to idea, or trying to fix or manage or to control something, to find something better or something more fulfilling. And the implicit belief in that restlessness is that it will work, right? The mind wouldn't do it if it didn't think it's going to get me there. But the irony being that that seeking and the restlessness itself is what prevents the mind from feeling fulfilled, from feeling content. So this is one of those patterns. What it's trying to deliver, it prevents from arriving in the first place. Safety, happiness, you name it. The restlessness is pulling away from that. So the encouragement here is to notice it. This is what mindfulness, quality of mindfulness does, right? It remembers, comes back. And then the insight comes just to see clearly how unsatisfying it is to never land, to be in the state of perpetual next thing, the next thing. And what mindfulness really teaches, I think, in so many ways is actually how to fully arrive and to land somewhere through the breath, through the body, through samadhi or cultivating concentration. So the next hindrance, lethargy, it's kind of a hard one to translate. I think it's classically translated as sloth and torpor, but nobody knows what that means. So I just say lethargy because I think it's a little more relatable. And torpor? Yeah, this were like old English translations when the suttas were first translated that have kind of stuck around. I honestly don't know what torpor means, so I apologize. But it's when the mind is cloudy, murky, kind of, tired in a way. And the metaphor for this one is the water is covered with moss or algae or a thick scum. Does anyone relate to having a mind that feels like it has algae in it at times?
No. If anyone says yes, I really want to talk to you.
But that feeling that there's a layer preventing clarity. And sometimes this is just like a lack of rest. But there's also a lack of energy that's not cured just by rest or sleep. I can take a nap. I can be as rested as I can possibly be, and the mind can still be foggy, slightly dissociative. And so I think we live in a culture where often people are deemed lazy or lacking willpower. But often this is kind of a form of protection. The mind, when there's overwhelm or there's difficulty or it can't cope, it naturally starts to check out. And I don't know if you've experienced this yourself or maybe been close to someone where you sense that they're not quite fully there, kind of behind this layer of algae. Katie's never going to let me. So rather than, placing blame, or what my often solution is to turn up the caffeine levels, the encouragement is to invite in curiosity and compassion, recognizing that this human body, it needs rest, it needs balance, and it's limited, right? It needs to be tended to. It needs water, thank you, yeah. And that it's not just about willpower, right? That's not always the answer when the mind is tired. So the insight here being that clarity and energy they're not just personal achievements, they arise when the conditions support them. So important to tune in and see what this body needs. So the last hindrance to cover today is doubt. And so this generally refers to like doubt in practice or doubt in mindfulness, but I think it can show up in so many different areas. Doubt in relationship, doubt in profession, you name it. The metaphor here is that the water is muddy or cloudy or stirred up. So there is sediment or something in there that clouds the mind. And how doubt works clouds the water of awareness with seemingly endless uncertainties. I don't know if anyone has any of those, these kind of like back of the mind, big life existential questions and doubts that just cyclically revolve and come forward. And I think these often come up for myself when I'm struggling. Things aren't going well. The doubts tend to surface. This isn't working. Why am I doing this? I'm doing something wrong. I need a different practice. I need to switch to a different, school of Buddhism or something. And this has definitely been a big struggle for me. We were just down in Nashville over this last weekend for this ceremony I was taking part in, like a beautiful experience. But I found myself the day before just really in a lot of doubt. Just doubting myself, doubting the practice, doubting having put so much time and effort into my training and my practice. And I can see how it works, because in a way it disguises itself as this wise discernment. It says, no, you need to look really closely at what you could be doing this wrong. This might be off. But again, what it does is it blocks the clarity of the mind in that doubting. So discernment, to me, real discernment is steady. It's a knowing that goes beyond conceptual fabrication. It's this kind of deep, deep knowing in the heart. So I was doubting kind of all day before the ceremony. And then I show up for the ceremony on Sunday, and I'm sitting there with some of my peers that I've trained with for 6 years. And we're kind of sitting in the back and watching everyone come in. And I just had this feeling of my heart of just overflowing with appreciation and contentment and such a deep knowing that it was all worthwhile, all the practice, all the effort, so truly worth it. And so that water clears, and there's this kind of undeniable knowing that comes forth. And I think for myself, that's something that has kept me coming back to this practice over and over again. Because with all the doubts my mind can have, that clarity of a settled, still mind, to me, has been one of the most trustworthy things in my life. And I know the doubt will return, and I'm sure I will see it again and again and again. But it's just dirt and water, and it settles. So to bring it back to the quote where we started, we're not trying to stand in the middle of something and know that the situation will pass. We're trying to stand in the middle of it and know that our overwhelm will pass. So it's not about waiting for life to become settled or pleasant or perfect before I practice. It's about learning to stand inside of the craving, the aversion, the restlessness, the lethargy, the doubt, and to just know them as conditions of the mind, not who I am. Which is it's not a small task. It's a big ask. But when the hindrances are seen clearly, there's this letting go that happens all on their own. And it leads to this clarity that leads to liberation in the Buddhist teachings. Seeing clearly that this mind has a potential to find a deep freedom and peace within, in nibbana, freedom. And I want to end with a last Tuere Sala quote. She said, "The work is not to get rid of what's here, but to learn how to stay." So this is what I have to share for today.